My family ignored me for years until they found out I was secretly a millionaire. Growing up, I was always the background character in my own family. If my life had been a sitcom, I wouldn't even make it into the opening credits. She had a magnetic personality, and my parents invested everything in her. They didn't have to. The way my dad's eyes would light up when Emily entered the room, only to dim again when he noticed it was just me. It's not like they were cruel, not in the way people usually think of cruelty, but indifference. That's a quieter kind of damage. It doesn't bleed, it doesn't bruise, but it sticks. Tutors, sports camps, Ivy League tours before she even hit 9th grade. Meanwhile, I quietly made honor roll, fixed the Wi-Fi router when it broke, and learned how to make dinner when Mom forgot I existed. Nobody there knew Emily. Nobody labeled me as her little brother. It was the first time in my life I felt like I existed on my own terms, and I clung to that like air. My parents didn't come. Emily had a regional swim meet that day, and of course, that took priority. I coded like a madman, spent long nights debugging lines of Python while my classmates slept or partied. I wasn't trying to get rich. I wasn't even chasing success. I just wanted to build something that mattered. Something that made me feel like I mattered. I remember getting off the bus, holding my little silver medal, thinking they'd at least ask how it went. They didn't. Nothing fancy, just back-end systems for student websites. Scheduling tools for clubs, a side project for a local nonprofit that paid me my parents. David and Susan had 2 kids, my older sister Emily, and me, Alex. I learned to cook simple meals and did my laundry by age 13. My weekends were spent building websites and tinkering with code while Emily juggled cheer practice, leadership council, and a very loud social life that took over every family dinner conversation. But if you asked any of our family friends, they'd probably say they only remembered Emily. Emily was the golden child, valedictorian, state-level swimmer, prom queen, you name it. No one ever outright told me I didn't matter, or silence was enough. The way they'd cut conversations short when I spoke. I still remember standing on the stage, scanning the crowd and realizing they weren't there. Just an empty row with 2 reserved signs still untouched. In middle school, I got 2nd place in a statewide robotics competition. By high school, I stopped expecting them to notice. When I graduated high school with a 4.0 GPA and a full scholarship to a local university for computer science, my parents skipped my ceremony because Emily had a book club brunch. I didn't cry. I just felt expectedly numb. College became my reset. My campus wasn't too far from home, but it might as well have been on a different planet. I poured myself into my major. In my sophomore year, I started taking freelance gigs. In Starbucks gift cards, but it felt good. My work helped people. Half the class looked lost. I remember thinking there's gotta be a better way. And I was finally getting paid to do the thing that made me feel most alive. Then, someone from the university IT department. They wanted to talk about integrating it officially into the student portal. I was stunned. I hadn't even thought that far. The real turning point came during junior year. Real legs. You could take this somewhere. Got serious about structure, even if I still showed up to meetings in hoodies and sneakers. But then one came through that made me stop in my tracks. An education tech conglomerate that wanted to buy us out fully. Clean acquisition. Cash. But I knew how to solve problems, and that's what I kept doing. I was sitting in a crowded lecture hall, watching the professor fumble through a confusing spreadsheet about course prerequisites and how to plan our next semester. It wasn't a dramatic decision, just a quiet realization that I didn't need the degree as much as I needed the time. I emailed my advisor, tacked up my off-campus apartment, and I went all in. It started as a Chrome extension, a simple, clean interface that lets students drag and drop courses into future semesters. Instantly seeing conflicts, prerequisites, and workload balance, I called it Course Loop. We worked late nights fueled by ramen and Red Bull, rewriting code, building out server capacity, reaching out to universities. Most never responded, but a few did. It wasn't flashy, but it was fast, intuitive, and actually worked. I put it on a student forum one weekend, and within days I had hundreds of downloads. He introduced me to a couple of angel investors from the tech community. Suddenly, I was in meetings I didn't feel qualified to be in, talking about revenue models, scalability, user acquisition, terms I had to Google between conversations. By the end of the month, a student senator reached out. A professor I admired pulled me aside after class and said, "This has legs." That professor became my mentor. I had no background in business. I dropped out midway through my senior year. I rented a tiny office downtown, more of a closet really, and brought on 2 interns from my old dorm. And those few told others. Within a year, CourseLoop was being used by over 40 campuses. I hired a proper team, brought on a coup. By the time I turned 25, we were at 120 schools. Investors were calling us. Venture firms, acquisition offers. I ignored the first few. But then one came through that made me stop in my tracks. An education tech conglomerate that wanted to buy us out. Fully. Clean acquisition, cash. The offer was $8.7 million. I didn't scream, I didn't celebrate. I was a millionaire, 26, quietly, privately. No fanfare. I didn't even tell anyone. I signed the papers, shook hands, and walked home in the rain. My heart pounding so loud I could hear it over the traffic. But my parents didn't follow me. Emily didn't even know I had an account. No one in my family ever knew. Still got seated at the end of the table during Thanksgiving. Still listened to Emily talk about her latest boyfriend, her business ideas, her dreams. No one else did. She left early. We broke up 2 weeks later. Nobody asked what I was working on. Nobody asked how I was doing. I made a LinkedIn post, vague and professional, just enough for my network to understand. ID moved on. I moved into a 2-bedroom condo in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing flashy. I paid cash. I bought a reliable car, finally replaced my old laptop, and then set up a donor-advised fund in my grandma's name. She'd passed away when I was 15, but she was the only person in my childhood who ever made me feel like I was enough, just as I was. Wanted to see how long it would take for someone to notice. 2 birthdays passed. It's not a word. The kind of guy who wore loafers without socks and used the word synergy unironically. I was invited, but only after a reminder text from my aunt asking if I'd gotten the email yet. I hadn't. They'd been dating for about 3 months when they got engaged, and naturally my parents were ecstatic. The last-minute one. They'd sent a digital invite less than 24 hours before the party. Emily didn't tee, even like the photo I posted when I quietly adopted a dog. A shaggy little mutt I named Scout. Everything else stayed the same. Still showed up for holidays. Thanks for driving all the way out here. You're like Emily's cousin, right? Once, when I mentioned buying a new place, Mom blinked and asked, "Is it a rental?" I said no. She just nodded and turned back to Emily, who was describing the interior of her new favorite wine bar. I even brought a bottle of wine as a gift, thinking maybe I'd finally be treated like I belonged. When I brought my girlfriend Laura to dinner once, Dad looked her up and down and said, "Did she lose a bet?" He laughed. Like a room you forget is in your own house. Eventually, I stopped texting in the family group chat. That was when I realized I wasn't part of their world anymore. I was a ghost, and they didn't even know I'd died. Sorry, man. She never mentioned you, I guess. It all changed because of a wedding, not mine. Emily's, of course. Oh, she was marrying some finance bro named Brad. She was around my age, wearing a bright floral dress and oversized sunglasses. I was on my way out when someone tapped me on the shoulder. A full engagement weekend was planned. Wine tasting, catered brunches, a rustic luxury theme that probably cost more than my first 2 years of tuition. Turns out, I was on the second guest list. Still, I went. Part of me still clung to that stupid flicker of hope, that maybe this time would be different. That maybe someone would see me. The vineyard was a 2-hour drive from my place. I showed up wearing a simple, charcoal gray suit tailored. Hugo Boss, understated but sharp. Brad greeted me at the entry. "Man," he said, shaking my hand with a politician's grip. I blinked. No, I'm her brother. The look on his face said it all. "Oh," he said, trying to recover. He laughed. I didn't. It would have hurt less if he were rude. But he was polite. Just genuinely unaware I existed. I stayed for about an hour, long enough to make small talk with extended relatives and nurse a glass of wine. "Wait, Alex Chen?" the woman said. "Yeah," replied, cautious. "Oh my God, I used Course Loop all through college," she said, grabbing the arm of her friend. "This is the guy I told you about, the app that planned our whole senior year." I froze. I hadn't heard that name in a while, not publicly anyway. It's wild, you're like legit famous in higher ed tech. Yo, I didn't know you were Emily's brother. Weren't you on some list? Like Forbes? Something? The friend chimed in. I nodded awkwardly. Forbes 30 under 30, yeah. Years ago, Emily appeared shortly after. The two women introduced me again, this time with fanfare. I smiled and answered politely, trying to deflect attention. They started talking excitedly, asking questions, complimenting the UI, telling me how much easier their lives were because of something I'd built. But the damage, or revelation, was done. I didn't want to be there when the questions started. Brad walked over halfway through. The rest from unknown numbers that were probably aunts and uncles I hadn't heard from since high school. He's like a tech entrepreneur, made millions off that scheduling app. "This is Emily's brother," one of them said to Brad. Just stared at me, calculating. Then forced a smile. Brad raised an eyebrow. "Seriously?" Emily said nothing at first. "Yeah," she said. "Alex always liked computers. I left shortly after that, but they came anyway." The next morning, I woke up to 12 missed calls. 3 from Mom, 2 from Dad, 1 from Emily. There was a voicemail from Mom. She sounded breathless. "Sweetie, why didn't you tell us about your business success? We're just so proud of you. Call me, okay? I'd love to hear more about what you've been up to." Then a text from Dad. "Lunch soon, just you and me?" Emily had posted an old photo of us on Instagram, a grainy picture from when I was 6 and she was 8, both of us sitting on Santa's lap. The caption, "So proud of my genius brother at ElexGen. Can't believe I get to say we're related, #sibling goals." Sibling goals? She hadn't spoken to me in 2 years. I stared at the screen, baffled. My phone started buzzing again. Brad texted me too. "Hey bro, bachelor party in Vegas this weekend? You in? Got some sick plans lined up?" Even my Aunt Karen, who once forgot my name and called me Ethan at Thanksgiving, commented a row of heart emojis under a photo I'd posted of Scout. Something had flipped, and not in a subtle way. I wasn't Alex the ghost of family dinners anymore. I was Alex Chen, the millionaire tech guy. The golden investment no one realized they should have nurtured until now didn't stop there. Over the next few weeks, I started getting invitations. Brunches, dinners, let's catch up texts. Random calls asking if I could help with a little tech issue or talk to my son who's into computers. It was like everyone suddenly remembered I existed. Not because they missed me, but because I was valuable now. And then came the ask. Emily called, said she was so glad we're close again, and wanted to chat about something delicate. I was sitting in my living room, Scout curled up beside me, laptop open to a stock dashboard. She began, "I feel really weird asking this, but Brad made some bad crypto investments. And our dream venue canceled last minute because of a deposit issue. We're trying to pull together a backup plan." I said nothing. She took a breath and said it. "We were wondering if you could help. Just $75,000. To cover the venue, some of the vendors, the photographer. It's a small thing, really. We'll pay you back." I didn't laugh. I didn't even raise my voice. I just said, "I'll think about it. She's always been there for you." That night I got a follow-up call from Mom. "She's your sister," she said. Had she? Dad emailed me later. Subject line, "Family first." His message was full of platitudes about sticking together and how money is just a tool to build bridges. I sat with it for a day, then I wrote a check. Not for $75,000, just $100. I placed it in an envelope with no letter, just the check. And on the memo line, I wrote, "For all the birthdays you forgot." I mailed it the next morning. The fallout was immediate. The backlash arrived faster than I expected. Mom called the same day the check was delivered. Her voice shook with disbelief and anger. "Alex, what was that supposed to mean? This is the most important day of her life, and you're treating it like a joke. $100? It ended with a suggestion that I should take some time to reflect on who raised you and what you owe to your roots. That's insulting. Funny how some people let money make them forget family. I wasn't dreading texts from people who only remembered I existed when they needed something. I wasn't hoping for approval. I was just still. No names, but it didn't take a detective to know who she meant. Cruel even. I stayed silent. It was gone. Let her fill the silence with her own assumptions, and flew across the world to a place where my name meant nothing. I hiked up quiet trails in the Peloponnese, ate warm olives on cliffside terraces, and read paperbacks in tavern corners where no one asked me what I did for a living. You have no idea what your sister's going through? Dad chimed in the next morning. A long, rambling email filled with faux wisdom about humility and how true success means sharing with those who matter most. I didn't reply. Emily didn't call or text. Instead, she posted a story on Instagram. A black screen with white text in a fancy cursive font that read, "Funny how some people let money make them forget family." No names, but it didn't take a detective to know who she meant. I almost responded. Instead, I booked a solo trip to Greece. I didn't tell anyone I was leaving. I packed lightly, put Scout in the care of a friend on a rocky beach outside of Naxos. I turned off my phone completely. For the first time in years, I wasn't checking metrics, emails, or stock alerts. When I came back 2 weeks later, my voicemail inbox was full. I didn't listen to a single one. I opened the family group chat out of curiosity. I hadn't left it. I'd been removed. There's no announcement, no warning. I scrolled through my texts. Nothing. It was as if my own family had hit mute on me. I set the phone down and smiled. It wasn't bitter. It wasn't smug. It was just peaceful. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was waiting at a window watching a party I was never invited to. I was finally somewhere else entirely, and it was better. Time passed. Birthdays came and went, holidays too. That Christmas, I donated $250,000 anonymously to a scholarship fund at my old high school. I asked them to name it after my grandmother, Lillian Chen, the only member of my family who ever made me feel seen. She used to knit while I sat next to her, reading science fiction novels out loud. She called me my little inventor. She once gave me a soldering iron for my 10th birthday and told my parents, "This one's going to build his own world someday." She died before she could see it happen, but I like to think she'd be proud. I didn't go to the family Christmas dinner that year. Heard through a mutual cousin that Emily's wedding had been postponed indefinitely, then downgraded to a courthouse ceremony. Apparently, Brad had lost more money in crypto than anyone realized. He'd taken off to find himself in Bali, and no one had heard from him since. I didn't feel vindicated, just distant, like a page that had been turned. The following summer, I was invited to speak at a tech conference in San Diego. I almost declined. I hadn't done a public event in years, but something nudged me to go. That's where I ran into Laura, my cousin. Oh my God, I wasn't sure if it was really you. She spotted me after my panel and rushed over with a warmth that felt almost foreign. We ended up getting lunch at a waterfront cafe nearby. She was working in nonprofit education tech and had genuinely followed my work over the years. Unlike the rest of the family, she hadn't reached out after the wedding drama, not out of malice, because she respected the distance I had put in place. She didn't mention Emily until dessert. "She's divorced," she said lightly. 6 months in. Brad took what was left of her savings and left her with a mortgage she can't afford. I stared out over the water. "Is she okay?" Laura nodded. "Physically, yeah. Emotionally? Probably not. But I don't think she's capable of reflecting on what happened." There was a long pause. Then she said, "You know, when we were kids, I thought you were just quiet. But I realize now, you weren't quiet. You were silenced. You were just born into the wrong theater." That hit me harder than I expected. I never forgot those words. She hugged me before we parted. No asks, no favors, just a hug from someone who saw me, not what I had. That December, I didn't travel. I booked a cabin in Banff instead. Wood-burning fireplace, floor-to-ceiling windows, snow falling in soft sheets like whispers. Scout curled up beside me as I sat with a mug of cocoa, typing out code for a new project, a free open-source scheduling tool for high schoolers in underfunded districts. No profit motive, just purpose. The silence in that cabin wasn't empty, it was sacred. Somewhere in the distance, my family celebrated without me. Maybe they toasted with wine and made jokes about my absence. Maybe they didn't mention me at all. Either way, it didn't matter. I had stopped looking through their window. I had built my own house, and it was warm inside. Some people believe blood is everything, And no matter how you're treated, family ties are permanent, unbreakable, who celebrate your wins not because they benefit, but because they love you. I used to think that too. But I've learned something else. Family isn't who shares your last name, it's who shares your quiet. The people who notice when you leave the room, who ask how you really are, who celebrate your wins not because they benefit, but because they love you. My chosen family is small. Lara and I never reconnected, but I met someone new, Maya, at a hackathon of all places. She laughed at my dry humor, brought her own laptop, and beat me in a speed coding challenge. We've been building more than just apps since then. My old professor still emails me book recommendations. Scout, ever loyal, follows me everywhere. Even now, snoring gently on the rug as I type this, I don't check the family group chat anymore. I don't need their validation. Found something better. People who see me. People I chose. And I've never felt more loved.